The first presentation here would be made by Jeffrey Haemer with a presentation named Internet Services and How They Grew. Jeff, please.
You want to say something first?
Yeah, I want to say the following, that I insisted, I asked Jeff to come here because in some special moments he was here. So in '93, when we did the first conference here ever in Romania, and we were thinking that we will fail, he was here. And we had such big success that next year we had 600 visitors at the conference, which you may imagine that in 1994 was quite difficult. This was because he had a conversation with Tom Christiansen. He was in Moscone Center in San Francisco, and we talked from Cluj from '93 by a link provided by Liviu Ionescu by EUNET. And they asked if he can come also to Romania, and everybody was very enthusiastic in this moment. So I'm sure that if he starts this session, will have success with RITE.
Thank you. Oh, look, there we go. So I think that since a lot of this stuff is about internet history and it's about internet services and it's about all sorts of things, somebody needed to talk about internet services and applications, the layer up from that. And so I'm going to talk about where we've been and where we're going, and I'm going to try to make it fairly short because the conference is running a little long, right? So as to where we're going, that's easy. As to where as to where we've been, that's not so hard. As to where we're going, well, yes. Okay. Hi, I'm pretty qualified to talk about where we've been because I've been doing it for a really long time. I started programming in 1967. I taught courses at the University of Colorado using card decks, and so I tell people that when I started programming and teaching programming, we programmed by punching holes in little pieces of cardboard. And one of my friends heard me and said, "Really?" And I said, "Well, I think so. But it seems so unlikely that maybe I just dreamed it. I don't know. It just doesn't, it's so long ago and it just doesn't seem like that's possible." Oh, yes, thank you. But what comes next is a more interesting question. And so I thought about it very hard, and I can give a very precise technical answer, which is that I don't know, right? But I think that there are ways that we can get insight about what will come next, and that's by looking at the past. My experience is that when we're talking about computing, everything old is new again. I will talk about a particular example in a second, but George Santayana says that those who cannot remember history, who cannot remember the past, are condemned to repeat it. And I think that there's a converse to that, which is that those who can remember the past can figure out what to repeat. And so a nice example of that is when in 1967 or so, you had terminals. Anybody here ever see a terminal? Some of you, right? And the terminals were connected to a mainframe, a giant computer in a big room that was less powerful than my phone is. And you typed on it, and you all shared the same computer, but the thing that was sitting in front of you wasn't a computer. It was just a channel to a computer. And by about 30 years later, by 1993 or so, 1997, There was a company called Sun that has been mentioned here already. And Sun made the first really popular workstations, and they sat in front of you, but its philosophy, its slogan was that the network is the computer, and so their vision at the time was that although you had a computer in front of you, it was often a thin layer that was a way to access the internet. And that was because a bunch of things like FTP were around that moved data from one computer to another, or Telnet and RLogin that could move you from one computer to another. And that sort of went away, but there were client-server architectures. It was a big deal for a while. And today, we have Chromebooks and we have cloud computing, and we'll hear about cloud computing shortly, yes? Chromebooks are another Linux distribution, and they're really appliances. I own a Chromebook. In fact, in 2020, Chromebook sales surpassed MacBook sales. So it's a big deal. And here you're back to the idea that you're sitting in front of this thing, but really what you're talking to is the cloud. I made these slides on a Chromebook. And, okay, let me do this correctly there. So I was thinking about internet applications, and I realized that what the internet does is it erases things. One thing is that it erases boundaries. So I mentioned the fact that it erases the boundaries between computers, because you can log into different computers, and you couldn't when I started. It erases the boundary of data between computers, because you can move your data from one computer to another, and it erases the boundaries between people. And I'll give you two examples. I quit my job as a developer at Twitter about 3 years ago, and the thing up on the upper left-hand corner is Jack Dorsey's first tweet, in which he was putting up his first tweet, and now Jack has millions of followers, right? And then the second, that was, I think, 2007. The second is an email from me to Sebastian Saralunga, who is not here right now, but whom I met in 1993 in Cluj when I came over. And he was a student, and by 2004, he sent me email and said, oh, I have some invitations to give out for Gmail accounts, which was this new product in beta, and you could only get it by invitations. Would you like one? And so that's when I got my email account. I got it because I had a connection to Sebastian. I was obviously already exchanging email with him, just not Gmail. And this is the distinction between these two, although they're both things that connect people across boundaries, across oceans, across continents, is important. And Esther Dyson is going to talk about those next. And I think I won't telegraph her punch. I'll let her give it. But there we go. So what else has the internet erased? Well, sort of a lot. It's like, how many of you still buy newspapers and read them every day, or go out and look at the newspapers for what the weather's going to be? Me, I look it up on my laptop, right? How many of you keep maps in your car? Yeah, a couple of you, but it used to be that we all did. And that's, the map industry has been erased. I've watched map stores close. How many of you own a multi-volume encyclopedia? I just look up things on Wikipedia, right? I get into an argument with somebody, I say, Alexa, what's the capital of Romania, you know? I actually own a printer, because I've made printers. I worked for Konica Minolta making printers for a while. But mostly people don't even bother. They just do things electronically, or they send it out to a print shop. How many of you have a phone book or have a landline? Some of you, it's the same, yeah, the same people who still own maps. My grandmother's phone number was 1 because she had the first phone. And now you can even take your phone from one place to another and keep your phone number, which in the US you didn't used to be able to do because the phone number was tied to a location. And that's all via the internet, of course. All of those phones. I worked making Android phones for a while, and the calls are all internet-based ultimately. That was actually, I think, originally the reason that Vint Cerf came up with TCP/IP was to make phone calls more secure and reliable. Come on. Now, obviously, I haven't talked about the ocean of different things, from ChatGPT to browsers that are internet applications, but that's because, you know, they give me 15 minutes. What can I do there? But it also erased another thing, which was privacy and security. Who here besides Mike can identify these two people? Anybody know who the person on my side of the slide is? Yes, okay, Adi knows. It's Eric Ullman, and he wrote SendMail, which used to transport all the mail across all of the Unix systems in the world. Oh, Adi, you can talk to Adi, and he will tell you about a story about how Eric saved him $5,000. He saved me a lot of work one time. I called him up and I said, Eric, I can't figure out how to configure my SendMail, and he just did it for me. But the guy on the left is Robert Tappan Morris, who wrote The Great Internet Worm in 1989 or something like that, 88. Was the first person to go to jail for, well, get convicted of internet crime of some sort, because the prosecutors in the government decided that they wanted to prosecute him for it. And he sort of did it by accident, actually, probably. He built it and then it got away from him by accident. But now we have spam, we've got viruses, we've got worms, we've got phishing, we've got all sorts of things that he was a pioneer for. And this picture, I took this picture at a Usenix Association event when he had just finished his community service. And then he became a professor at Harvard or MIT. MIT, yeah. So he's a smart guy. There, okay, so I'm gonna finish out with the story. And this is it's just a completely personal story, but I think it has a message. So on the last day of September, 30th of September, I got up in the morning and I looked at my phone. Actually, I wasn't even out of bed. I looked at my phone and the display said, in 17 minutes, you have an appointment to get your flu shot, your influenza shot, vaccination. And I went, oh, I forgot about that. I put it on my calendar a month before and just completely forgotten, and I got up and my phone had looked in my calendar and was reminding me, helpfully. So I quickly got on my clothes, I ran to my car, I took my phone with me, and I said, give me driving directions to the clinic where I'm supposed to get this. And that was 2 towns away. And so I drove 2 towns away, following the driving directions of Google Maps. And on my way there, my phone which was sitting up on my dashboard, said, you have a text message from Ron Friedland. It's a guy I know in Oregon, which is a time zone away from me. Said, would you like me to read it to you? And I said, yeah, I would. So it read me the message. And then it said, would you like to reply to it? And I said, yes, I would. And so I dictated a reply. I'm driving. I'm not looking at my phone, you know. And then it read it back to me to make sure that it had it right. And then we had a little text message exchange, Ron and I did. Sometimes I had to tell the phone, nope, you got it wrong, try it again, you know. And then I got to the clinic. I rolled the window down. Oh, it had told me that the clinic was closed, by the way, and that was because the clinic was closed, but they were having this clinic they were having the shots in the parking lot. So I just drove through, rolled my window down, stuck out my arm, got my shot, rolled the window back up, and asked my phone to give me a list of coffee shops near me, because this is a different town. And so it gave me recommendations, it told me the hours, it just picked ones that were open, and I picked one and got driving directions from Google and went there, had coffee. I was gonna work on slides for this presentation, and their access point was down, their internet was down. So I used my phone as an access point, right? And worked on my slides, and then I finished up and I got in my car and I got driving directions to go home, and I said, call my sister Jo, and it said Joe Mobile or Joe Work, and I said Joe Mobile, and my sister was in Hawaii on vacation. That's 4 time zones away from me, and I looked it up on the map, on Google Maps, and it's roughly the same distance as Bucharest to Nepal. So I'm making a phone call, hands-free, to my sister, waking her up, because it's early in the morning there, and it's this incredible distance. And Colorado is very mountainous where I live, and so I was even driving on a road that didn't used to have connectivity. You know, you just couldn't get access. Maybe there are places in Romania that are like that. And I got home and I thought about it. And a decade ago, I was making Android phones. I was working for a company called Aircell at the time, since it's become Go-Go Business Aviation. And we made our own Android phones. And none of the stuff that I did was anything that I could have imagined a decade before. I couldn't imagine that voice to text could be that good. I couldn't imagine that coverage would be pretty much universal. I couldn't imagine that it would, it could read the maps, or it could read my calendar and tell me what was open and what wasn't open. And if that's a decade, 30 years is like insane, so I can't predict what's going to happen in 10 years, but I can predict what kinds of things might reappear. I probably can't guess what the guise is. However, all of that stuff, every bit of it, is internet-based. And so talking about internet applications and services without talking about the internet itself, is like talking about fish and never mentioning that they live in water, right? And so it's these guys, you know, it's ANISP, it's ESOC, that you need to support if you're going to actually take seriously the idea of using internet application services, of watching to see what's going to happen in internet applications and services, you need to go thank those people. And so who here is actually from ANISP or ISOC? Anybody? Somebody, right? So go thank those people when you get a chance. And pretty much I think that's all I have.